We can fix this.
You want a drama? Enjoy the premiere.
The moment I saw Celeste writing names on that napkin at Romano's, I knew my marriage was about to become a crime scene. Not the bloody kind, the kind where your dignity gets homicided in broad daylight while everyone pretends not to notice. Tom, honey, we need to talk about the guest list, she said, her voice dripping with that fake sweetness she used when she wanted something. The restaurant buzzed around us, filled with the comfortable chatter of families who probably weren't planning elaborate betrayals over their chicken parmigiana. I watched her manicured fingers dance across the napkin, writing names I recognized but wished I didn't. Mason Voss, Julian Crane, Derek Phillips. 3 men who had no business being at my wedding unless they were serving drinks or parking cars. These are your exes, Celeste. They're my friends, Tom, my very close friends. She smiled that practice smile, the one that made her look like a news anchor delivering bad weather. If you can't handle that, I have a past. Maybe we shouldn't get married. The ultimatum hung in the air like smoke from a grease fire. My sister Carla, sitting across from us, raised an eyebrow so high it nearly disappeared into her hairline. My parents exchanged the kind of look that said they were already planning my funeral. Okay, I said simply. Celeste blinked. She'd expected a fight, tears, maybe some dramatic storming out. Instead, I just nodded and went back to my lasagna like she had asked me to pass the salt. Okay, she repeated. Sure, it's your day too. Invite whoever you want. What I didn't tell her was that I'd been suspecting something for months. The late nights at networking events, the way she guarded her phone like it contained nuclear launch codes, the sudden interest in yoga classes that somehow required designer workout clothes and professional makeup. I'm a civil engineer. I solve problems by looking at the foundation first. And the foundation of my relationship was showing some serious cracks. That night, while Celeste showered off what she claimed was stress sweat from wedding planning, I did something I'd never done before. I cloned her phone. Don't get all impressed. It wasn't some high-tech spy movie nonsense. We shared an iCloud account and she'd never changed the backup settings. 5 minutes with my laptop and I had access to everything. Every text, every photo, every late-night conversation she thought was private. What I found made my stomach drop like a broken elevator. The group chat was called Tom's Wedding LOL. Subtle. Mason. Can't believe you're actually going through with this. Celeste. He's stable, good income. I can do whatever I want and he'll never leave. Julian. What about Thursday nights? Still on? Celeste. Obviously. Tom thinks I'm at book club. Derek, you're evil. I love it, Celeste. He's so trusting, it's almost sad. Like a golden retriever. I sat in my home office, staring at the screen until my eyes burned. 3 months of messages. Photos I won't describe, but will never forget. Plans for meeting up. Detailed discussions of my boring personality. And worst of all, a betting pool on how long it would take me to figure it out. The current over-under was 2 years. They were about to lose that bet. I've always believed in the power of documentation. In my line of work, you don't build a bridge based on assumptions. You gather data, run calculations, and plan for every possible failure point. My marriage was about to become my greatest engineering project. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a man possessed. Not with anger. Anger makes you sloppy. I was possessed with the methodical precision of someone who'd found a structural flaw and intended to expose it properly. I hired Nick Torino, a private investigator who looked like he'd stepped out of a 1940s detective novel, complete with stubble and a coffee obsession. Nick specialized in cheating spouses, which apparently was a growth industry in our charming Connecticut suburb. Your wife's not exactly subtle, Nick told me, sliding photos across his cluttered desk. Thursday nights at Mason's condo. Saturday afternoons with Julian at that art studio downtown. Sunday mornings with Derek at the Marriott. Sunday mornings? I asked. She told me she was at yoga. Well, technically, there was stretching involved. I paid Nick his fee and asked him to keep digging. Meanwhile, I started my own surveillance operation, aided by our neighbor, Mrs. Dorsey, who had apparently been tracking Celeste's comings and goings like she was running air traffic control. That BMW of hers is gone more than it's here, Mrs. Dorsey informed me over her fence, her gray hair perfectly coiffed, despite the early hour. And when she comes back, she's always checking her makeup in the rearview mirror. No woman checks her makeup after grocery shopping, Tom. Trust me on that. The evidence piled up like snow in a blizzard. Credit card receipts from restaurants I'd never been to. Hotel charges on days she claimed to be at work conferences. A gym membership she'd been paying for but never using because she was getting her exercise elsewhere. But the real goldmine was her laptop. Celeste had always been careless with technology. She used the same password for everything. Mason 2019, the year they'd first hooked up, apparently. Her email revealed a coordination effort that would have impressed a military strategist. They had schedules, backup plans, code words. Mason was trainer, Julian was artist, Derek was consultant, I was golden boy, their pet name for the sucker who was paying for everything. The wedding planning became surreal. Celeste would sit next to me on the couch, enthusiastically discussing flower arrangements while texting Mason about meeting up later. She'd taste cake samples with me on Saturday afternoon, then spend Saturday night with Julian, sending him photos of the cake and joking about how Tom actually thinks this is about him. My favorite message was from Derek. Does he know you're planning to keep this up after the wedding? Celeste's response, are you kidding? Marriage is just a piece of paper. Besides, he's too boring to notice. That's when I decided it was time to flip the table. I called Celeste's parents and suggested a pre-wedding family dinner. Something intimate, I told her mother, Mrs. Patterson. Just close family, and the wedding party. I want everyone to get to know each other better. Mrs. Patterson was thrilled. She'd been pushing for more family involvement, worried that the wedding was becoming too impersonal. What a wonderful idea, Tom. Celeste is so lucky to have such a thoughtful fiancé. If only she knew how thoughtful I was being. The dinner was set for the following Saturday at the Patterson family home, a sprawling colonial that screamed, we have money and want you to know it. I volunteered to handle the technical aspects, music, lighting, maybe a slideshow of memories. That's so sweet, Celeste said, kissing my cheek with lips that had been God knows where. You're really getting into this wedding spirit. I spent the week preparing my presentation, not the kind Celeste was expecting. Saturday evening arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that makes everything feel like a movie set. The Patterson house glowed with warm light, and cars filled the circular driveway. I recognized Mason's red Corvette, Julian's vintage motorcycle, and Derek's black Mercedes. The gang was all here. Celeste looked stunning in a blue dress that probably cost more than most people's rent. She worked the room like a politician, air-kissing and laughing at jokes that weren't funny. Mason, Julian, and Derek clustered around her like satellites, each one playing their part in what they thought was an elaborate deception. My sister Carla arrived fashionably late, carrying a bottle of wine and wearing the kind of smile that meant trouble. How's the happy groom? She asked, hugging me tight. About to be happier, I whispered back. Dinner was a masterpiece of small talk and hidden agendas. Celeste's father dominated the conversation with stories about his golf game. Her mother fussed over everyone's plates. Mason regaled the table with tales of his fitness influencer lifestyle, while Julian discussed his latest art installation, and Derek name-dropped clients from his consulting firm. I sat quietly, eating my prime rib and watching the performance. They were good, I had to admit. If I hadn't seen the evidence, I might have believed they were just old friends celebrating a happy occasion. After dessert, I stood up and tapped my wine glass. I'd like to say a few words, I announced, and maybe show everyone some pictures. Celeste beamed at me. Tom's been working on a surprise presentation all week. You could say that. I connected my laptop to the big screen TV in the living room. Everyone gathered around, wine glasses in hand, expecting a sweet montage of our relationship. The first slide was a screenshot of the group chat. Tom's wedding LOL, I read aloud. Interesting name for a chat group, don't you think? The room went silent except for the grandfather clock ticking in the corner. Celeste's face went white, then red, then a shade of green I'd never seen on a human being. Tom, what are you... Oh, we're just getting started, honey. Click. Next slide. Mason's shirtless selfie with the caption, for my favorite married woman. Click. Julian's artistic nude with Thursday inspiration written underneath. Click. Derek's hotel receipt with Sunday fun day as the subject line. This is fascinating, I continued, my voice steady as a metronome. Here's my fiancée discussing our sex life with her lovers. Here's her rating system for your various talents. Oh, and look at this one. She's actually taking bets on how long it'll take me to figure out what's going on. Celeste's mother dropped her wine glass. It shattered on the hardwood floor like my marriage had shattered in my mind weeks ago. The over-under was 2 years, I said, but I'm an engineer. I noticed structural problems early. Mason stood up, his face flushed. Look, man, this isn't what it looks like. Really? Because it looks like you've been sleeping with my fiancé every Thursday for 6 months. And you, I turned to Julian, have been her Saturday afternoon entertainment. And Derek, Sunday mornings at the Marriott, creative choice. Julian tried the artistic approach. Tom, relationships are complex, and sometimes people need different kinds of connection. Save it for your therapy session, Picasso. Derek went for the business angle. We should discuss this privately. Work out some kind of arrangement. The arrangement is that you three get the hell out of my life, and Celeste gets to explain to her parents why their daughter is a sociopathic narcissist. The room erupted. Celeste's father started yelling at Mason, who started yelling back. Julian grabbed his jacket and headed for the door. Derek tried to blend into the wallpaper. Celeste's mother burst into tears. Through it all, Celeste just stared at me with something that might have been respect if it weren't mixed with pure hatred. "You fool," she whispered. "No," I said, closing my laptop. "I'm the engineer who found the cracks in your foundation. The wedding's off, by the way. I'll send everyone a nice email tomorrow." I walked out of that house feeling lighter than I had in months, leaving behind a scene that would fuel neighborhood gossip for years to come. Celeste didn't take the public humiliation well. I suppose I shouldn't have been surprised. Narcissists rarely handle exposure gracefully. The first sign of trouble came Monday morning when I arrived at work to find my boss, Janet Morrison, waiting in my office with a grim expression and a manila folder. "Tom, we need to talk." The folder contained a formal complaint filed by Celeste, claiming I had maltreated her, stolen private information, and created a hostile environment that affected her work performance. She was demanding that the company take action against me for cyber stalking and emotional misuse. "She's claiming you hacked her personal accounts and distributed private photos without consent," Janet said, her voice carefully neutral. "These are serious allegations." I sat down slowly, feeling the familiar calm that came over me when facing a complex problem. "Janet, do you know what I did for a living before I came here? You were a forensic engineer. You investigated structural failures." "That's right. And the first thing you learn in that job is that evidence doesn't lie, but people do constantly." I opened my briefcase and pulled out a thick folder of my own. Everything I showed at that dinner came from shared accounts, public social media posts, or information freely given to me. I didn't hack anything. I didn't steal anything. I simply documented what was already there. I handed her copies of the backup authorizations, the shared account agreements, and most importantly, screenshots showing that Celeste had been posting some of those same photos on her public Instagram account. "She gave me access to these accounts when we got engaged," I explained. "Standard couples stuff, shared calendars, photo backup, emergency contact information. I never accessed anything I didn't already have permission to see." Janet reviewed the documents carefully. As the head of HR for an engineering firm, she knew how to evaluate evidence. "What about the maltreatment claims?" "I never contacted her directly after the dinner. I never threatened her. I never followed her or interfered with her work. I simply presented factual information to people who were directly affected by her actions." I pulled out another set of documents. "Here are the phone records showing I haven't called or texted her. Here are the GPS logs from my car showing I haven't been anywhere near her workplace or home." Janet closed the folder and looked at me with something approaching admiration. "You really are a forensic engineer, aren't you?" "Evidence-based decision-making. It's not just for bridge collapses." The complaint was dismissed by Wednesday. By Thursday, word had spread through Celeste's office about why she'd really filed it, thanks to some strategic conversations between Carla and a few well-connected friends in the local business community. But Celeste wasn't done yet. Friday evening, I was in my garage workshop, my sanctuary where I built furniture and restored old tools, when I heard my phone buzzing with notifications. Someone was posting about me on social media. The posts were creative, I had to give her credit. According to Celeste's version of events, I was a controlling, abusive husband who had manipulated and gaslit her throughout our relationship. She was the sufferer, finally finding the courage to escape my psychological torture. The evidence I'd presented was fabricated, the result of my obsessive surveillance of an innocent woman trying to maintain friendships with people from her past. Mason, Julian, and Derek had all shared her posts, adding their own testimonials about my dangerous behavior and unstable personality. Within hours, the story had spread through our social circle like a virus. My phone started ringing, friends wanting to know if the allegations were true, colleagues expressing concern. Even my own mother called, worried about what she was reading online. "Tommy, she said, using the childhood nickname that made me feel 8 years old again. People are saying terrible things about you on the Facebook. Mom, remember what you taught me about believing everything you hear? But there are pictures, honey. Screenshots of mean messages you supposedly sent. That's when I knew Celeste had crossed a line she couldn't uncross. I called Nick Torino. I need you to document everything that's being posted about me online. Screenshots, timestamps, user information, everything. Planning to sue for defamation? Something like that. While Nick worked on the digital forensics, I started making some calls of my own. The advantage of being an engineer in a small professional community is that you know other engineers, and engineers love solving puzzles. My friend Dave worked in digital security. My colleague Sarah specialized in data recovery. My former classmate Mike had started a company that helped businesses deal with online reputation attacks. By Sunday night, we had built a complete timeline of Celeste's social media campaign, including evidence that several of the screenshots of my alleged messages had been digitally fabricated. We also discovered that she'd been using fake accounts to amplify her own posts, creating the illusion of widespread support. But the real breakthrough came when Sarah recovered deleted files from a shared cloud account that Celeste had forgotten about. Hidden in a folder marked wedding stuff were the original screenshots of the group chat, along with dozens of photos and videos that made my dinner presentation look like a church slideshow. Tom, Sarah said, calling me late Sunday night, you need to see this. She's been documenting everything. It's like she was proud of what she was doing. The files included a video diary where Celeste described her plan to have her cake and eat it too by marrying me while continuing her relationships with Mason, Julian, and Derek. She talked about my pathetic devotion and how easy it was to manipulate me. She even joked about how she'd handle things if I ever found out. He's too nice to really fight back, she said to the camera, laughing. What's he gonna do? Bore me to end with engineering facts? I watched that video 3 times, feeling something cold and calculating settle in my chest. She was right about one thing. I was too nice to fight back the way most people would. But I wasn't most people. I was an engineer, and I was about to show her what happened when you miscalculated the load-bearing capacity of a nice guy's patience. The irony wasn't lost on me that Celeste chose to make her final stand at a wedding. Not our wedding. That had been canceled with extreme prejudice. This was the wedding of Jennifer Walsh and Michael Torres, a young couple who'd booked the same venue for the weekend after our original date. I found out about Celeste's plan through Mrs. Dorsey, who had become my unofficial intelligence network. She was on the phone in her backyard, Mrs. Dorsey reported, leaning over our shared fence with the enthusiasm of a war correspondent, talking about how she was going to fix this situation and make you understand what you'd lost. She kept saying something about a grand gesture. The grand gesture, as it turned out, was Celeste's plan to crash the Walsh-Torres wedding and declare her love for me in front of 200 witnesses. According to the social media posts she'd been making all week, I was clearly having a mental breakdown and needed her to bring me back to reality. She thinks you're going to be there, Carla told me over coffee Monday morning. One of her friends posted that you were obsessed with the venue and would probably show up to relive what you'd lost. Am I obsessed with the venue? Well, you did drive by it 3 times last week. I was checking the structural integrity of the parking garage. There were some concerning cracks in the concrete. Carla gave me the look she'd been giving me since we were kids. The one that said she could see right through my explanations to the petty motivations underneath. Fine, I admitted. Maybe I wanted to see if she'd actually be crazy enough to go through with it. And she's definitely crazy enough. Saturday arrived with the kind of perfect autumn weather that makes wedding photographers weep with joy. The venue, Riverside Manor, a converted estate overlooking the Connecticut River, was decorated with white roses and golden leaves, creating a scene that belonged on a greeting card. I arrived early, not as a guest, but as a concerned citizen who'd noticed some troubling structural issues in the parking garage that needed immediate attention. The venue manager, a stressed-looking woman named Patricia, was initially skeptical of my claims until I showed her my engineering credentials and pointed out the actual cracks I'd noticed during my previous obsessive visits. These hairline fractures in the support beams could indicate foundation settling, I explained, which was technically true, though not immediately dangerous. I'd recommend having a structural engineer take a look before your next major event. Patricia was grateful for my diligence and asked me to document my findings. This gave me a legitimate reason to be on the property with a camera and clipboard, looking official and professional rather than like a jilted ex-fiancé lurking around his former wedding venue. The guests began arriving around 4 o'clock, a parade of well-dressed strangers celebrating love and commitment. I felt a pang of something. Not jealousy exactly, but a kind of wistful recognition of what I'd thought I was going to have. Then I saw the red Corvette pulling into the parking lot, followed by Julian's motorcycle and Derek's Mercedes. The gang was back together for one final performance. Celeste emerged from Mason's car wearing a white dress that was either a bold fashion choice or a complete break from reality. She'd styled her hair in an elaborate updo and was carrying a bouquet of white roses that perfectly matched the wedding decorations. Jesus Christ, I muttered, watching from my position near the parking garage entrance. She's actually doing it. They marched toward the main entrance like a wedding party from hell. Mason in his best suit, looking like a fitness model playing dress-up. Julian in all black, probably going for an artistic vibe. Derek in a conservative Navy outfit that screamed, "Trust me with your investments." And Celeste in the middle, radiant with the confidence of someone who believed her own publicity. I followed at a discreet distance, my clipboard and camera providing perfect camouflage. The venue had multiple entrances, and I knew the layout well enough to position myself where I could observe without being seen. The wedding ceremony was taking place in the main ballroom, a gorgeous space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river. Jennifer Walsh looked like a princess in her elaborate gown, and Michael Torres couldn't stop smiling as he waited at the altar. Celeste and her entourage had positioned themselves near the back of the room, trying to blend in with the other guests. But white dress aside, Celeste had never been good at blending in anywhere. The ceremony proceeded normally for about 10 minutes. The officiant was just asking if anyone had objections to the union when Celeste stood up. "Actually," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the room, "I do have something to say." A murmur of confusion rippled through the crowd. Jennifer and Michael looked bewildered. The officiant, an elderly man who'd probably seen everything in his decades of performing weddings, raised an eyebrow but remained professionally composed. "This is about love," Celeste continued, stepping into the aisle. "Real love, the kind that survives misunderstandings and forgives mistakes." She was looking directly at me, or rather at the spot where she expected me to be sitting. Unfortunately for her dramatic timing, I was actually standing behind a pillar near the side entrance, getting the whole thing on video. "Tom Rourke," she called out. "I know you're here, I know you're hurting, but we can fix this. We can start over." The crowd began turning around, looking for this Tom person who was apparently the real focus of this wedding ceremony. Jennifer's face went from confusion to anger as she realized her special day was being hijacked by someone else's relationship drama. "Ma'am," the officiant said firmly, "this is neither the time nor the place. Love doesn't wait for the right time." Celeste declared, warming to her theme. "Tom, you showed everyone those messages because you were hurt. I understand that, but you took them out of context. You made it seem like I didn't love you, but everything I did was because I love you so much it scared me." Mason, Julian, and Derek were shifting uncomfortably, probably realizing that their supporting roles in this drama were about to become much more prominent. "Tom!" Celeste called again, her voice getting desperate. "Please, just talk to me." That's when I decided to make my entrance. I stepped out from behind the pillar, clipboard still in hand, and walked calmly down the side aisle. Every head in the room turned toward me, and I could hear the distinctive sound of 200 people holding their breath at the same time. "Hi, Celeste," I said pleasantly. "I'm not actually a guest here. I'm documenting some structural concerns in the parking garage." The silence stretched out like taffy. Celeste stared at me, her mouth slightly open, as if she'd been expecting a different script entirely. "But since you're here," I continued, "and since you've interrupted these nice people's wedding, maybe we should clear up a few things." I pulled out my phone and opened the video app. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for this disruption. My name is Tom Rourke, and this woman was my fiancée, until I discovered she was simultaneously sleeping with these 3 gentlemen." I gestured toward Mason, Julian, and Derek, who looked like they wanted to disappear into the floor. The messages I showed weren't taken out of context. In fact, I have additional context that might interest everyone. I connected my phone to the venue's sound system, a feature I'd noticed during my previous visits, and played a 30-second clip from Celeste's video diary. Her own voice filled the room. "He's too nice to really fight back. What's he going to do? Bore me to end with engineering facts?" The crowd's reaction was immediate and visceral. Gasps, murmurs of disapproval, and more than a few angry comments about the disruption to the ceremony. Celeste's face went through several color changes before settling on a shade of red that matched the roses in her stolen bouquet. That's not... You can't just... Actually, I can, I said. It's your voice, recorded on your phone, saved to your cloud account. The same account you used to coordinate your activities with Mason, Julian, and Derek here. I turned to address the room. Again, I apologized to the bride and groom. This woman seems to think that crashing your wedding will somehow convince me to take her back. I wanted to make it clear, in front of witnesses, that there is absolutely no chance of that happening. Jennifer Walsh, who had been standing frozen at the altar, suddenly found her voice. "Security!" she shouted. "Get these people out of my wedding!" The venue security team, who had been watching the drama unfold with professional interest, moved quickly to escort Celeste and her companions toward the exit. But Celeste wasn't going quietly. "This isn't over, Tom!" she called out as Mason tried to guide her toward the door. "You can't just throw away what we had." "What we had," I replied, "was you lying to me for 6 months while sleeping with half the county. I'm not throwing it away. I'm disposing of it properly, like hazardous waste." That got a few chuckles from the crowd, which seemed to break the tension. As Celeste and her entourage were escorted out, the wedding guests began to relax and refocus on the actual purpose of the gathering. I approached Jennifer and Michael, who were still standing at the altar looking shell-shocked. "I'm truly sorry about this," I said. "Your wedding is beautiful, and you deserve better than having it interrupted by my ex-fiancé's mental breakdown." Jennifer studied my face for a moment, then surprised me by laughing. "Are you kidding?" she said. "This is the most exciting wedding anyone in my family has ever been to. We'll be talking about this for years." Michael nodded enthusiastically. "Dude, that was like something out of a movie. The way you just calmly destroyed her whole performance? That was epic." The officiant cleared his throat. "Shall we continue with the ceremony?" As Jennifer and Michael exchanged vows, I slipped out through the side entrance, feeling lighter than I had in months. In the parking lot, I could see Celeste arguing with Mason next to his Corvette, her white dress wrinkled and her elaborate hairdo starting to come undone. She saw me walking toward my truck and broke away from Mason, running across the asphalt in her high heels. "Tom, wait." I stopped and turned around. Clipboard still in my hand, the picture of professional calm. "What, Celeste?" "This is crazy. You're being crazy. We can work this out. People make mistakes, but that doesn't mean..." "You're right," I said. "People do make mistakes. My mistake was thinking you were capable of basic human decency. Your mistake was thinking I was too stupid to notice what you were doing." "I never said you were stupid. You called me a golden retriever. You bet money on how long it would take me to figure out you were cheating. You made a video diary documenting how easy it was to manipulate me." I stepped closer, and for the first time since this whole thing started, I let some real anger show in my voice. "You turned my love for you into a joke you shared with your lovers." Celeste's eyes filled with tears, but I was done being moved by her performances. "The difference between us," I continued, "is that when I found out what you were doing, I gathered evidence and presented it factually. When you got caught, you lied, manipulated, and tried to destroy my reputation. That tells me everything I need to know about your character." I got in my truck and rolled down the window. "Oh, and Celeste? Next time you want to make a grand gesture, maybe don't do it at someone else's wedding. It's tacky, even by your standards." As I drove away, I could see her in my rearview mirror, standing in the parking lot in her wrinkled white dress, finally understanding that some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. The structural integrity of my life had been compromised, but I'd identified the problem, removed the damaged components, and rebuilt on a stronger foundation. Sometimes the villain gets to write the ending, and I just did.